United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, in collaboration with the Transport and Highways Ministry, held the National Consultative Conference to introduce the concept of e-mobility for public transport in Sri Lanka, chaired by Transport, Highways and Mass Media Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardana at the Galadari Hotel on Tuesday.
From different years of experience working in the
The government of Sri Lanka is past as exploring opportunities for shifting from fossil fuel-based transport towards energy-based transport system. Various initiatives such as policies and strategies have been formulated alone.
The minister during his address said that in view of the economic situation in Sri Lanka and around the world, the conversion to electricity as an alternative energy source instead of fossil fuel is taking place rapidly. He said that under such circumstances he would like to express his gratitude on behalf of the Sri Lankan government to the ESCAP for providing support in formulating an e-mobility policy framework for Sri Lanka. Presently, the use of electric vehicles is growing rapidly in Sri Lanka, which is vital as an environmental-friendly, cost-effective source of energy, which has many benefits like reduced air emissions and reduced noise pollution, the minister said. He further said that in order to promote this concept, the government needs to pay attention to infrastructure development and establishment of charging stations. To attract the people, it is necessary to provide the ability to get these services more easily. It is important at this moment to provide necessary incentives to investors regarding the investment opportunities available for e-mobility, and according to a long-term plan, the contribution of all those involved in the project is greatly appreciated for the success of this exercise for a green economy, the minister emphasized.
A comprehensive document with legal backing will help to bring all except related.
And the transport sector is one of the fastest growing CO2 emitter, which currently contribute about 27% of the emission from the fuel consumption in the Asia-Pacific region. In addition, actually, when you look at the Asian context, so transport sector emission actually grew by 41% during the last decade. And then there is actually challenge in the growing vehicle as well as the personal vehicle. I think we just go outside of the room, this hotel, I think we see the many private vehicles there. And then there is a challenge of the urban congestion as well as, so in the Asia actually there are about 10 most congested cities. And then we just are out of the COVID-19, and the transport sector was really hard hit, and most importantly the public transport. Therefore, actually, the region, including the Sri Lanka, actually need to address these challenges and move towards the low-carbon public transport system. And actually, in every year, in the COP26 and 27, and next year in the Dubai and the COP28, there is an ongoing discussion of how countries and cities could address these challenges of the growing emission, as well as how to reduce the global GHG emission. And there are also initiatives on the public transport as well as the urban transport sector, talking about the low carbon transport and focusing on urban sustainability. So many, what we have seen is that many cities and the national government actually are already working toward the electric mobility. We already heard from the Sri Lanka, even though I think you are still working on the policy, but there are already the national initiative there. And in this case, actually, the China actually is leading on the electric mobility. And then we are hearing from Professor Swami and the Indian experience that will be really useful for how the Sri Lanka move forward. And we can hear from our expert from Thailand as well as there. And what we have seen is that a review of because we make commitment to national determined contribution. And when you look at that, what the Asian country has done is that electric mobility as well as the urban transport, and then change to the fuel, enhancing fuel efficiency. Actually, these are the three priorities, not only of the Sri Lanka, but other Asian countries as well.
Being an island nation, Sri Lanka faces significant climate challenges. Beyond the evident environmental impacts, climate change poses grave implications for crucial sectors like agriculture, industry, transport, health, and energy production. To safeguard its future and address these pressing issues, Sri Lanka, I'm sure, has prioritized and must prioritize a clean energy transition to secure a sustainable future. Additionally, Sri Lanka relies heavily on imported fossil fuels, making it susceptible to price fluctuations and geopolitical risks. I believe it's almost like 1/3 of the import bill goes in importing fuel. The transport sector in Sri Lanka accounts for a significant portion of the country's GHG emissions, contributing to nearly half the total emissions in the energy sector. Roads dominate the transport domain, responsible for approximately 88% of the total GHG emissions in this sector. Electric mobility supports the clean energy transition by reducing emissions, integrating more renewable energy into the grid, and reduce dependency on the fossil fuel. Solar, wind, and hydropower in particular presents attractive alternatives that can sustainably harness the country's abundant natural resources. By embracing electric vehicles and the associated infrastructure, societies can move closer to a sustainable, low-carbon future. If you have to argue for a case for electric vehicles, there are four very clear aspects which one needs to look at. One is, of course, the sustainability. There are no tailpipe emissions, better grid balancing, and opportunity for exploiting RE power and climate change. Second, of course, is the convenience, both the users as well as the drivers of the system. And then the efficiency part, well-to-wheel efficiency, regenerative braking, instant power to wheels, and there is no lag time in terms of the torque. And more importantly, ultimately, everything depends on economics. And lower operating and maintenance costs, favorable tax regimes, energy security and economy, diversification and balance of payments. Here I would like to highlight that last year, India, is a company called CSL, it's a public sector company. It took out a tender for 5,000 electric buses. What was interesting was, the outcome was very, very interesting and very encouraging. The prices of electric vehicles per kilometer rate was in fact slightly lower than that of the diesel vehicle prices. And therefore, scale can matter much in terms of its impacts there. Of course, in terms of the way technology has moved, we have moved from completely conventional ICE to start and stop, regenerative braking, to power assist, and then short electrical drive in terms of hybrids, and then plug-in hybrids, and now we have moved to fully electric. And if you really look at the overall volumes today, about 8.3% of the total new vehicles which come into the market are electric vehicles. And I'm sure this will pick up much rapid rate as we move forward. And in that volumes, it's also important that most of them are fully electric and not hybrid. And therefore, the way forward is going to be electric. And there are a few issues there. If you really look at the developments of the sector, in terms of the range is one major concern which all the electric vehicles will have. In terms of the public transport vehicles, range as of now with the technological evolution, now we are able to achieve about 300 to 350 kilometers in one charge. I think that's what is achievable. And that itself can become a limit factor. But when it comes to public transport with opportunity charging, it can be enhanced further to 400 or even 500 and 600 kilometers. In fact, there is an experiment which is going on right now. When you move from Delhi all the way to Mumbai, what people do is in between around Jaipur, they actually change the driver. and along with the driver, they are trying to change the battery itself. And therefore, battery swap model appears to be something which is catching attention of the public at large there. And then you have options in terms of the battery technology, lithium iron phosphate, that's LFP, nickel manganese cobalt, that's NMC, and then lithium titanate oxide, LTO. LTO is the most recent entrant, but in most of the cases, it is the lithium LFP and NMC are the popular ones, more because of the handling and other related aspects there. Then, in terms of the battery charging itself, if you really could look at the global presence there, numbers are increasing, but then the overall numbers which are required are not still there. But then, again, do you really need so much emphasis on the battery charging? If you focus on public transport, if you focus on three-wheelers, which is much more prevalent in this country, we may not really have to focus too much on the public charging. It's a depot charging and the home charging, that's probably is going to work, and few public charging facilities should be able to suffice the entire requirement there. What is important is the global policy support, the government policy support, which is important for us to move forward. In fact, in Norway, 1990 is when it all began. And if you go to US, 2008, China 2014, India 2017. I think those were the major initiatives which took place. They are the ones who dominate in the overall sector today. And China is, in fact, is the biggest EV manufacturer as well as operator. India has picked up in the recent past there. It's not so much about the private vehicles that India has focused. India has focused much more on buses, and then three-wheelers, and then the two-wheelers, and not the cars. I think that is something which we need to look at as we move along. There are clear-cut policies there. There are three examples of policy there. One is in India, in terms of the Surat, and second one is from South Korea, and the third one is China. Here I would like to highlight, there is a national government policy which is called as FAME 1 and 2, faster adoption of and manufacturing of electric vehicles, that is FAME. And under that FAME, government gave a subsidy up to about 40% of the total vehicle costs to the manufacturers, not to the vehicle owners or vehicle purchasers there. And as a result, 5 or 6, initially there were only 2 companies which came from China. Today we have 7 electric vehicle bus manufacturing companies. I thought it's a big change which has happened in these 3-4 years there. And as a result, about 10 to 15,000 buses are being manufactured annually. That's one at the national level. At the state level as well as at the city level too, there are policies in terms of subsidies given for ownership of green vehicles there. In terms of the range, when I was talking, it's not so much on the long haul vehicles, it's much more on the buses that the range is happening much more significantly, and they're focusing on the bus itself would make much more sense there. The prices of lithium-ion batteries has been going down significantly, and therefore in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we may expect the prices to fall further. Today, about 35 to 40% of a vehicle cost is actually that of the cost of the battery. And if that comes down with the operating cost advantage, EVs would become a significant player in the mobility sector there.
For more latest news, subscribe to FTTV.